Hi, welcome to a new episode in the Internet Surfer, hosting the most horror and creepiest stories from Reddit. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy.
Serious, stories of creepypasta are great, but does anyone have any good true creepy stories? Episode 6. Scary and horror stories from Reddit creepypasta. I used to work at a movie theater in the booth upstairs. I often worked late and alone, with just customers in the theaters and a manager in the downstairs office. It got dark, surrounded by noisy projectors that one by one would be shut off as the movies wrapped up. The building was split into 3 different upstairs areas for the machines. I was in the smaller area that also had 2 windows overlooking the lobby. The last movie had wrapped up and there had been 2 customers left in the building, not many people. I could peer through my creep windows and make sure they had left. This night I was wrapping up the last showing and the place was darker than a tomb. Like, pitch black, not an ounce of light but my flashlight. I was heading through this small area with the windows when I heard a laugh. It was the laugh of a small girl, high-pitched and almost hysterical. Imagine a horror movie laugh. My blood ran ice cold, and I froze. I managed to get to the windows, assuming it was a customer laughing like an idiot. Nope, empty down there. So, I am alone, in a pitch-black area with a creepy laugh. Then I heard it again. Well, I sprinted out of there like Usain Bolt on cocaine. The manager that night was a guy who was known for playing jokes on the projectionists. He would hide in the bathroom that was tucked down a hallway and jump out as we walked past in the darkness. I sprinted my ass all the way to the office, busted in, and accused him of being a jackass. He gave me the most concerned look I had ever seen. He had been sitting in the office the whole time working on reports for the GM. I told him and we both got nervous and went home for the night. Never heard it again. Shortly after this I told another manager about the experience, and she told me about a security guard. He was a police officer during the day and picked up some extra cash working theater security. One night he was on his nightly check, and he heard a laugh. A high-pitched, girly laugh. He went into the girls' washroom to check. The building was supposed to be empty. Stall by stall he opened the door to look for this prankster. Each door made him more pissed. At the last door he heard the laugh again and burst in. No one there. That is when the girly voice said, "Not here." He quit that night. Weird stuff goes on in movie theaters. Weird. I am a skeptic of the supernatural, but anything is possible. I will not discount supernatural occurrences, if I cannot find a logical explanation for them. I have experienced a few incidents I could not explain, but I am going to tell you about the one that freaked me out the most though. So here it goes. I live in the Twin Cities, in Minnesota, USA. A lot of people in the cities have cabins in either northern MN or rural Wisconsin. Our cabin was in rural Wisconsin, in a small town called Danbury. The cabin is on Long Lake, at the very end of Long Lake Road. Along with the cabin came almost an acre of land, covered by thick forest. We carved a trail through the land for ATVs and whatnot. So, the scene is set. Now, about me. I am an outdoor enthusiast and have been forever. I am 6 feet 4 inches, fit, and have been a hunter since I was like 12. I know my environment, the wildlife, and the forest well, and am typically comfortable in the woods. I come from a military family and am trained in multiple forms of combat, armed and unarmed. I also have extensive firearms training and as a result, am confident in my ability to defend myself. I am not really scared of people. Big predators on the other hand, like bears, wolves, manbearpig, whatever, I am not a huge fan of. This brings me to the weirdness. I am 23 now, but at the time of the incident, I was 16. Even at 16, I was a decent hunter and had good common sense. Anyway, I was at the cabin with my cousin and grandparents. It was the middle of summer, I think July, with hot temperatures and whatnot. My cousin and I were shooting at each other with airsoft guns. We had a full-on battle going on throughout the property, including the woods, which were my stalking grounds. I was wearing my BDUs, with face cover and all, as well as head-to-toe camo. Our battle ended up about 100 yards northwest of the cabin, into the woods. We ended the war on the main trail and were standing and talking about the events that had transpired. I was still on guard because I always am. I suppose I could be a tad paranoid. All right, so, we were standing there talking, when I noticed something move at our 12 o'clock, about 50 meters out. I got quiet and focused dead ahead, scanning. My cousin was still talking, so I whispered, "Silence." So, he shut up. I figured the movement I had seen was just a bird or something. As a joke and to freak him out, I told him we were being watched. That is when I noticed that the woods were dead quiet. No birds were chirping. There was no sound. That is when I started to think, this only happens when a big predator is around. So, I started looking even closer. That is when I saw it. At my 12 o'clock, there was this large animal. It had reddish, brown fur and almost blended in perfectly, until I focused on it. It had long front limbs, arm-like, with formidable claws, and it was standing slouched down, against a tree, like it was trying to be stealthy. Even though it was standing like that, it was as tall as me. The only reason I saw it was because of its teeth. It was panting because its whitish teeth were visible. Its snout appeared to be a tad elongated. I could not get a better look, because my first thought was, we have to go. I even said it aloud. My cousin was already freaked. When I said those words, he bolted up the trail, towards the cabin. He nearly left me in the dust, because instead of running when he did, I waited a good 3 seconds. I was being protective of him, keeping my eye on it, until I saw it move. It was fast. That is when I ran like hell. I did not see which way it ran. All I know, is that I heard it crashing through the woods. My cousin stopped at the shed, which was still 50 meters from the cabin, to wait for me. When I caught up, I yelled, "Go, go, go." And we both bolted to the cabin. We got inside and shut the door. My grandma asked why we looked panicked and had slammed the door shut. I knew they would not believe me, so I said that we had seen a bear. My cousin nodded. Later that night, after my grandparents went to sleep, we talked about it. I asked my cousin if he had seen it. He told me that he had paused for a second, to look back, after he ran, to see if I was running with him. He said that he had seen me still looking at it. He said that is when he saw it move and me run. He said he had mostly just seen a flash of fur. He went on to say, he thought it was not the right color to be a bear. I also agreed that it was not the right color to be one and told him that we only had black bears in the area and that it was not built like a bear either. I told him I never thought it was a bear. He asked me why I had lied about it to my grandparents. I told him they would not have believed us. We have kept it between the two of us, until now. Still, the animal did not match any known regional animal profiles in the area. I am at a loss for what it may have been. I do know it was stalking us though and that it was built like an athletic predator. Not like a bear. It was not as heavy-set as a bear would have been. After the incident, neither of us would go into the woods on foot, alone, without a gun. We only went back in the woods on ATVs from that point forward. I always loved that cabin, up until then. Fortunately, the cabin has been sold now. I had just graduated from high school and wanted to do something to prove my courage, which at the time I thought I could do by doing some solo backpacking along the Appalachian Trail. I had never done anything like that before, and I figured it was a good first step toward adulthood. I arrived at the trail, tired from the long drive from my home in Indiana, and started hiking in. I had planned out my hike and knew I could hit a backcountry site in the time I had on my first day. I hike 5 miles in and arrive at my backcountry site. It is just a couple hundred yards from the trail. I am doing this in late fall, so most of the plants are dead and the leaves have already given up the ghost from all the trees. I can see the trail easily and anyone on the trail can see my campsite. I set up my tent, and hang up my food bag, so bears cannot get it, and I am trying to make a fire. Everything was damp and I was having trouble, so I was concentrating intently and did not notice the man standing 3 feet from me until he cleared his throat. Startled, I knocked over my puny stick pyramid and nearly pissed myself. I regain my composure and chuckle at myself, half expecting the man to apologize and join in my relived laughter, but he does not. I stop my laughter short as I look at the guy. He was dressed like most hikers/campers, North Face, boots, etc. I say, "Hi." He stares at me for just the briefest of moments longer and then says hello back. I would describe the man, but he looks like an average guy. Imagine an average man and you have an idea of what this man looked like. The only thing that set this man apart was his stare. It was penetrating and appraising. I ask how his hike is going and stumble my way through some small talk, trying to shake the prey feeling that has overcome me. The man does not say much, but he sits down on a log near my tent like he is going to stay for a while. I put my hand in my pocket and feel the small camp knife I have brought along with me. The sun is getting low. It falls quickly in the woods. Still, this man does not make any sign that he plans to leave anytime soon. We talked a little bit about it being my first time camping, and he seemed impressed that I choose to do it alone, or maybe not impressed, but he took special interest in my being alone. Again, his gaze was appraising. At this point, I nonchalantly take the knife out of my pocket and begin to whittle a stick. I can tell he notices the knife. I begin to ask him probing questions like, "So, are you camping around here, and, are you here alone?" I realize that he does not have a pack, not a big backpacking pack, nor a day bag. I know from my map that we are at least another several miles from another campsite, and that we are around 5 miles from the trailhead. He was not going to get out of the woods before nightfall, and unless it was in his pocket, he did not even have a headlamp/flashlight. Quite suddenly, he stands. I quickly get to my feet too, knife held near my knee, low but ready. He says he must go, and with that turns and walks away. He heads down the trail in the direction of the trailhead. It is almost true night. I wondered where he was heading and how he would get there in the dark. I watched him until he reached a bend in the trail and moved out of sight. For another few minutes I kept my eye on the trail and the woods around me, half expecting to see him sneaking up on me. I redoubled my effort to start a fire, but reluctantly abandoned my efforts. All I brought was a lighter and some matches. It was my first time, forgive me, and everything was so damp, the ground muddy. By the time I look up from my fire it was night. I crawl into my tent and replay the strange encounter. The more I think about it, the more I realize how out of the place the man was, and how uneasy he made me feel. Then it hit me, what if he comes back? I decided I would move my campsite. With just the light from my headlamp, I pack up my stuff, retrieve my food bag, and hike another hour down the trail. It began to rain. There were no other actual campsites, so I just hiked off the trail away and then set up my tent, hung my food bag and went to sleep, dreaming of bears with the face of that strange man. Early the next morning I awoke, alive and well. I packed up my site and realized I had forgotten my water bottle at my previous site. So, I hiked back. I arrived at the old site and my breath was sucked from my lungs. Boot prints in the mud lead from the trail to my campsite and circled the area. He had come back in the night. After we got married, my wife and I bought our first house. It was brand new, we were the first owners. It was in a new neighborhood. There had long been rumors that it was built over an old Aboriginal burial ground, a Pet cemetery, though I never found any proof of that and always thought it was BS. Also, I am not religious in any way and do not believe in ghosts. My wife never thought there was anything odd about the place, but I did. Nothing scary, it just had a weird vibe, if that makes any sense. I wasn't the only one. In the first year we ended up on 2 trips and each time a different friend house sat for us, and both of them said after we got back there was something weird about the place that they couldn't quite put their finger on, and neither ever agreed to house sit there again. Anyway, around year 3 I was asleep in the middle of the night and woke up to a weird noise. You know the soft swish sound it makes when someone is trying to walk quietly on a carpet while wearing socks? It sounded like someone was walking around our bedroom. Thing was, I was not the only one who heard this. While my wife was still fast asleep, our 2 cats, both of which slept on the bed with me, also heard this. They woke up and both were tracking their heads in the direction of the sound as it moved. After about 20 seconds of this, one of the cats meowed at the sound. Not angry or scared, kind of a hello sort of meow. The sound stopped. The cats both sat there staring at the last spot it had come from for another 20 seconds or so, but the sound did not come back, so they both put their heads back down and went to sleep again. I stayed awake for an exceptionally long time. Talked my wife into moving and 3 months later we bought a new place. Never experienced anything like that before or since. Back in high school, junior year, I think, I was in a long-distance relationship with a girl from several states away. She would visit a few times a year, and when she did, we obviously spent as much time together as possible. One night, we were making up from a fight we had just had, and we drove up in my dad's truck to the lover's lane of the area, a dirt cul-de-sac at the end of a road on the mountainside. From this little lot, you could look out over the town at night, and it was cool, which is why it was a popular place to go. So, we are parked in the truck just off the road, looking out over the town and cuddling while we talk about our issue. Like many trucks, it had a small hatch window on the back of the cab facing the bed of truck. We opened this to let some fresh air in. At some point during our talk, another vehicle pulled up along the cul-de-sac. Since I didn't make it clear before, the cul-de-sac didn't really have a curb all the way around it because it was partially dirt. I think there was construction in the area or something, so you could pull off the actual road and out onto the flat area overlooking the town. We had pulled off the road like that, but the other vehicle stayed in the area with the curb, so we would have to go right past them to get back onto the road. Anyway, this vehicle pulls up and a bunch of guys a little older than us get out and start messing around. Seemed like they were doing some drinking, but not. The thing is, they had left their headlights on, and their car was facing into the back of the truck, so their lights were shining right on us, and it was annoying. But we ignore them for a while, figuring they are just being idiots and will eventually leave. Then, we get curious what they are talking about, because we can hear them talking loudly through the open back window, and we start listening in and picking up pieces of their conversation. It gradually became clear that we were the center of their attention, and they were working themselves up to doing something. I do not remember exactly what they were saying, except for something that one of them said that sticks very clearly in my memory: "I swear to God, I'll do it." At this point, I am becoming nervous, and put the keys in the ignition, telling my girlfriend that I was not interested in finding out what exactly was going on. So now, we are both watching nervously out the back window as we listen to them egging each other on to this mysterious dare, when a few of them start walking toward the truck. They are 15 yards away, and I do not want to make an idiot of myself in front of my girlfriend by immediately flipping, but I do turn on the truck and put it in reverse, but not moving yet. When they saw the brake lights, they started walking quicker, and that is when the nope button officially got pushed in my mind and I turned the truck around and started driving back to the road. But like I said, their car was between where we were and the road, so driving back to the road takes us right past them. As we are passing their group, a couple of them run at the truck and one of them jumps onto the back bumper, grabbing the tailgate. Now, whatever traces of doubt had been there about whether we were the target of something, innocent or not, was gone, so I floored it, and the guy fell off. I do not know if he was hurt, I do not care. It looked like they were starting to get into their car as well, so I booked it out of the area and we did not see them again, nor did we ever return to that place. I still have no idea what would have happened if we had not gotten out of there, and that, to me, is the scary part. I would like to think that they were just trying to scare us and would not have done anything, but at the same time, I have heard stories of people at places like that getting harassed/killed/whatever else. It is entirely possible that we both came remarkably close to something horrible that night, and the experience scares me to this day. I worked for a campus police department while in college. I used to hang around the office between classes, because why not? One day, the chief comes in and asks if he can get a plainclothes search party for this kid that had not been seen in 2 days. Sure, I say, and all 30 of us spread out in pairs to search. While near the south corner of campus, we are looking in bushes near buildings and in some access paths, normal passed-out drunk locations, and I see this guy staring at me while standing on a landscaping wall. Weird. Mention it to my partner, and he is all, think about it later, we got to search. Eventually, we come to the other side of that wall, and the chief comes over the radio, calling off the search. After so many hours, we gave up. My actual shift started a number of hours later, and I am immediately pulled aside for a security shift. It is at the exact place where I was when the search was cancelled. I arrived in time to see the man from the wall being carted into an ambulance. He had fallen bizarre after drunkenly climbing it 2 days before. My partner and I swore we would not say stuff about what we had seen. Another time, same job. This university has a nuclear reactor used for research. Since its output is weapons-grade material, it has tight security hooked up to the system at the dispatch desk, including audiovisual surveillance and motion and vibration sensors. One day I am chilling with the dispatcher on a night shift because I have a spare hour, and a motion sensor goes off in the control room. Nothing appears on the video. The dispatcher grumbles at, "That damn cat." Sure enough, in the break room next to the controller a cat walks out of a wall, sits on the table for a second then vanishes. Over the course of the next 10 minutes, we watch as alarm after alarm activates, including one labeled, "Reactor Pool," usually accompanied by video of a cat. I watch amazed as the dispatcher calls the unit sitting outside the reactor and reports that, "Schrödinger is at it again." A grumpy full-time police officer walks through the building, clearing room after room, including a few with a cat watching. He reports all clear. No cats. Another I have told before. Mac 5158 29.5 months ago I moved into a new house over the winter. My first actual house I have owned on my own, so I was stoked. And we just had our second kid just a week before signing, so we are excited to get her room remodeled for her. Walls painted, floors redone, making this house ours. Of course we set up a baby monitor first thing, as the children's rooms are on the opposite side of the house. At first there were no issues. Baby did not enjoy the room during the day, she would stare at the walls as if she did not like the pale purple paint. We painted them a nice orange that weekend. We also got a cat. That is when things started getting weird. The cat and the baby now had no problem with the room in the day. Our daughter was too young to do much other than be calm or fuss, but the cat was old enough to be a bit more expressive. All day she would stare at the southeast corner of the room. At night she would arch her back and hiss, as if threatened. We would start hearing faint noises like talking over the monitor at night, but never loud or clear enough to make out. I am nothing if not a logical man. That corner had an old dresser that was rescued from an old army hotel when it closed. The cat could sense old smells it did not like. There was also the entrance to the crawlspace under that corner on the outside, so a lot of wires entered through there. Both children and small animals are sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. I went under the house and removed about 100 feet of extraneous wiring from Tuesday previous owner's satellite TV and rewired that section of the house to eliminate interference and replace old wires with shielded cable. We also moved the dresser. Just in case. But the noises did not stop. They grew more frequent. The cat refused to go in the room during the day. It would sit awake in the crib all night, body between the baby and the rest of the room, eyes locked to that corner, occasionally growling or hissing. We stopped letting our son have his radio on at night in case we were hearing that. As we met our neighbors we would ask if they had any small children, but none had baby monitors of their own. We installed an alarm system, and I took to keeping my favorite rifle loaded by the bed. Occasionally the alarm would claim our daughter's window would open, but no alarm would sound, and we would find it secure when checked. We ran out of explanations. We began letting our daughter sleep with us so she could get better rest. For lack of a better option, I continued renovation. We finished the bathroom, started in other rooms, but did not do any more in the nursery. Out of a morbid curiosity, we left the baby monitor on at night. The noises still happened, but with that room being unused, they sounded almost sad. After a week or so without any use of that room whatsoever, I was lying awake after a long day at work, watching an episode of Bones. Out of nowhere, clear as day, a woman's voice comes over the monitor and calmly says, "It's okay. I'm leaving now." The monitor clicked off. We have had no problems since. I talked to my wife about it, and we recalled one phrase the old owners said during the closing. They had their third kid, and the house was not big enough anymore. We had noticed a fair amount of construction material they left behind. "Well, we had thought of an addition," she said looking at her husband, "but then there was that thing." They did not make much eye contact after that.
This was in South Africa, just outside of Cape Town on the highway back in 1988. I was on a little road trip with my fiancé, at the time back to Durban where she was born. I had just finished my mandatory service in the Angolan War, and the country was an extremely dangerous place to live in. We had been driving for more than 4 hours in the dead of night when we came up to a footbridge. I noticed a small black object approaching us at eye level. It was a massive brick hung from wire off the footbridge. I tried to swerve out of the way, but it resulted in us crashing into a deep ditch. As I sat realizing what was happening and trying to regain my senses, I heard the shouts of a dozen or so men approaching from the other side of the road. I grabbed my terrified fiancé and dived into this marsh-like field on the other side of the ditch. I covered us in mud and told her to restrict her breathing, and we hid 4 feet from the car, in plain sight but hidden, just as I was taught in the South African Defense Force. The footsteps got closer and the taunts louder, and before I knew it, there were a dozen or so black men with machetes walking around us, trying to push the car out of the ditch and look for us. We hid there for 3 hours as they salvaged the car, and after we thought they left, we crawled along the ditch back to a farmhouse. It was one of the scariest experiences of my life. I cannot imagine what they would have to done to us, specifically my fiancé, if they had caught us. My wife and I are glad we live in Canada now. When I was 3 or 4, we lived in a 1950s ranch house my parents bought at a sheriff's sale. It was run down, but a bargain because it was an only few blocks from my grandmother's home, on the same block as my sister's school, and my dad could be to work in 5 minutes. Where the side door came into the house from the carport, there was a utility closet. It housed the hot water heater, a furnace, and a trapdoor down to the crawl space below the house. The utility closet was in a short L-shaped hallway between the kitchen and the den, which we used as a family room. I remember the crawl space always had a dirty water smell to it. The floor of the crawl space was not poured concrete, but was composed of loose gravel. My sister would be at kindergarten all day, so it was just me and my mom until it was time to walk to the school to get her. I would play alone in the den while my mom was decorating cakes, her side job, in the kitchen. My mom would hear me carrying on long conversations in the den with my toys. One of my favorite things was to make a cave by lifting the leg rest of the recliner and playing with my toys underneath. It used to annoy my mother because I never put it back down. One day she asked me why I always did that, and I told her, because the light from the big window hurts their eyes. The light hurts your toys' eyes?
No.
The two little black boys who come out to play with me. That freaked her out, so she talked to my dad about it and they asked me more about it. I told them I had two friends named Pummy and Punky. They were two little black boys that lived under the heater in the utility closet. Pummy always wanted to play, but he had to drag Punky along with him because he never wanted to come, but they were not allowed to ever be apart. They were both terrified of my dad, and they would disappear back into the closet when they would hear him coming. At night, since my dad was home, they were too afraid to come out. So they would fall into the crawl space and crawl until they were under my bedroom. Sometimes they would whisper jokes to me through the floorboards, but mostly I would just hear them moving around in the gravel. It ended when my mom found me sitting in the utility closet with the door shut. I told her that Pummy and Punky had to leave because a ragged man who walked along the train tracks at night almost found them. They saw him in our backyard trying to peek through the screen door. So, they crawled into the furnace, turned to cinders, and flew out through the chimney.
Friend of mine lost his wife when she was serving in Iraq. She was in a convoy and it was attacked. She was killed, but they got her body back in home. During the fight she fired 2 full magazines, but the third had only 2 rounds in it, and 1 in the chamber before she was killed. So, he was left alone with their 3-year-old. They live in a low population area, and one day a rabid dog came out of some trees and charged him and his boy when they were sitting on the back porch. He grabbed his son and tried to shield him when they heard 3 shots fire from a rifle just a couple of feet away and the dog fell dead feet from them. When he got up to see who it was, there was no one. He did find the shell casings, 3 5.56 cases. He did not own an AR or any rifles, just a shotgun. Before I get to the story of the with the suitcase, I have to preface it a little bit. Many years ago, when I met my ex, her and her family live in a mobile home. My ex has this younger sister, who is a bit messed up, in and out of psych wards, etc. My ex and her younger sister shared a room in the mobile home. While we were dating, and before my son was born, she told me this story about how her younger sister would wake up and talk to the man in the hallway. The man always had a suitcase and wore a brimmed hat. My ex and her family always dismissed them as, well, the younger sister is a bit nut. Flash forwards a few years. My ex and I have a son together. Her parents moved out of the mobile home and into a house, and were renting the mobile home to my ex. Our son's room was the exact same room my ex and her sister slept in. One night after our son had gone to bed and was asleep for a long while, I checked on him. We heard him get out of bed. We figured he would come out of his room and ask to use the potty. Instead, he started talking to someone. He said hi and started talking about his favorite stuffed animal. At that time it was a ducky. Curious, I called back and asked to whom he was talking. He pops his head out of his room and informs me he is talking to the man with a suitcase and is wearing a hat. At the time he was about 2.5, and never heard about his aunt seeing the same guy.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.